I thought this was the after party. Hi, everybody. How are we feeling? If tired, say nothing. Okay, yeah, I'm also a little bit tired. We'll get through this. It's going to be short, hopefully, and sweet. The thing is, it's the last talk of the day, so it doesn't even need to be short, because guess what? You stuck around like 2 hours later. So I will try my best, okay? My name is Tejas. That's pronounced like contagious. I'm not contagious. I don't have COVID or anything. It's just, it helps people pronounce my name. And I've had a really great career. I've worked in tech for 20 plus years. I've worked at some of the best companies, and I've consulted for others. And today I run a small but effective developer relations consultancy where we work with a number of dev tools companies to help them get the most out of relationships and really know their developer communities, okay? But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're here to talk about front trends, front-end trends. Can you tell? Yeah, give it up, give it up. 3 of you. You know, I don't give a, like, whatever, we're just here to have fun. So, we're going to talk about trends, things to be aware of, things to maybe pay attention to that maybe you don't get to pay attention to in your day-to-day job. Maybe you're too busy doing something in Vue, and meanwhile you hear, oh, there's this thing called runes in Svelte. What is that? Are we going like full Ragnarok? I don't know. But here we're just going to give you some context that gives you enough confidence to then participate in conversations happening in and around your space, okay? One disclaimer, this talk is probably already outdated because the JavaScript ecosystem moves fast. I've done my best. Literally, I changed my slides like 5 minutes ago. I was standing there right next to Flow, and like it's now different. So it's the best up-to-date we can, but it may be outdated still. For the latest happenings and things, of course, I'm on X and YouTube. And yes, I do call it X, because guess what? Guess what? That's what it's called these days. X, formerly Twitter, okay? But anyway, we're here to talk about front trends. And before we get into it, I want to tell you, and this is Dwayne. If Dwayne's here, oh, there. Hey, what's up, dude? Thanks for the backpack. Front trends, just I need to get this out of the way. Web components is a standard that is a browser standard that is supported in all major browsers with polyfills all the way back to IE8. I found this out from Dwayne. And honestly, web components, so we just build things with web. It's good, it's effective, it's an approved standard. So I don't know why we don't do enough with web components. Adobe Photoshop is now browser-based, and it's built with web components at that level. So you can build serious stuff with web components, and I'd encourage you to look into that. React is awesome. Svelte is awesome. We'll talk about all of that, but web components, pay attention to it. It's good. Anyway, if we talk about front-end, I want to start by saying this. Front-end and back-end don't exist the same as they used to. The line between front-end and back-end, that's me sometimes. Anyway, the line between front-end and back-end is somewhat blurry. Front-end used to be, back in my day, you build a UI, and that's it. And you make a fetch request to something in the void, something that people in another team develop, preview, ship to some Kubernetes something, and then it connects and it works. This was the boundary between front end and back end. I fetch something and it works. This is getting blurry with an emphasis on the best friend forever. And my best friend forever is Fabian. No, the best friend forever, the BFF, stands for backend for the front end. Which anyone aware of this term? Yeah, okay, many of you. Yes, this is something that is so much more common to the point where people go, front end, back end, this distinction doesn't make sense anymore. We're writing like components in React at least that execute on the server, and we're very serverful. And so what does that mean? Why do we even do this? There's 3 key reasons. Number 1, data fetching is just a pain if you do data fetching. It's not only a pain, it's also insecure if you do data fetching primarily from a browser, and definitely insecure if you do data fetching exclusively in the browser. We work with a number of different dev tools companies, a number of different consultancies, and it's kind of nuts. We see this mistake over and over and over, where people are fetching things in the browser and just like leaking API. I can open the network tab, look at the authorization header, and steal tokens on most like consultancy-built websites for like actors and things. It's kind of nuts how prevalent this is. When you fetch data on the server side, of course, all of that is obfuscated from the user, and you just send markup. So the BFF is a great tool for this. Number 2, rendering. Woof, woof. Rendering on the server side takes a load. It takes the CPU work off of your client's device, right? So if you render a bunch of components on the client's device and they don't have as much power, as much CPU power, rendering can take time. But if you render your components on the server, environments where you control the resources, you can ship HTML, you can even stream to your users, and so it's faster. You take a load off there. Finally, you can do all of this at the edge. What is the edge? It's the nearest boundary of your local network on the internet, your local node. Cloudflare is famous for edge computing because they actually have a great deal. They have like agreements with most internet service providers, so they're really close to you. Cloudflare has over 270 plus points of presence. That means locations around the world where they can serve data from really close to users. And oftentimes, not always, the closer you get your stuff to users, the faster things are, and people typically like fast things. If you go to web.dev, there's a blog post by web.dev, which is Google's blog, titled "Milliseconds Make Millions." And it's about how, really, the faster your thing is, the more likely you are to turn a profit. It's a very, very brilliant article, and I would share that with you. So because of the BFF, the prevalent advice, thanks for taking a photo, dude. The prevalent advice is just use a framework. If you're building a website, a web app, just use a framework. So Andrew from the React core team says if you use React, you should be using a React framework. If your existing app doesn't use a framework, you should incrementally migrate to one. If you're creating a new React project, you should use a framework from the beginning. And this is awesome, but for me as an engineer, I want to know why. What is the mechanism behind why? Andrew goes on to say that if you don't use a framework, you're probably going to like accidentally make one, and it's not going to handle as many edge cases as like Next.js and Remix, etc. But again, why? And it's really because frameworks solve for these things out of the box. You'll get server rendering out of the box. You'll get data fetching out of the box. And some of them also expose edge middleware primitives. So to fully understand this, what I want to do is, in a short time together, and by the way, I know it's the end of the day and we all just kind of want to get out of here. So if you decide I'm bored, at literally any time, you have permission to like do this. Okay, just be like, move on. And I will, I promise, because I want to respect your time, and we are pretty behind. And I won't be offended, I swear. I talk a lot. So what I want to do is, in our time together, build the beginnings of a framework, but this is not going to work with this resolution. So I'm going to maybe give myself a little bit more space. Optimize for, the screen has no name. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? We'll optimize for my screen. Is that, oh, that's perfect. I have way more space. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at how frameworks solve for these problems. So we'll open the code, we'll cd into framework, and we'll npx vite, okay? And this is just going to spin up a little React app that, depending on network availability, queries an API and gets a bunch of stuff. This is classic app. You fetch data from somewhere, you retrieve your data, and then it's a bit stateful, right? You have some UI state here. And then if you click on this, you get a JSON response to a picture. That is a very unfortunate picture. I don't know what that was, but anyway. So this is what we're doing. So how does this work, and how can a framework help? This is built without a framework. When you build without a framework, you oftentimes fall into the trap of client-only rendering. And if you look at client-only rendering, this is the actual markup that makes it to the client, to the browser, right? It's just script tags. There's nothing useful here. Like, no user agent, no browser is going to look at this and go like, ah, I know exactly what this page is about. You're hurting yourself. So what actually happens? This is sent to your user. Then the browser goes, oh, OK, I see a reference to index.jsx. I'm going to go download that. And then I'm going to execute it. And then that thing is going to fetch more data. You introduce a lot of loading network waterfall. It's a pain in the butt. You can solve this with a framework through server rendering, and you can make it so that with server rendering, you send actual useful markup to your users, like text that they can, without JavaScript, they can use, and search engines can also read. Okay? So how does server rendering work? What we're going to do is kill this, and I think we have VS Code open. Okay. We are going to build a very bare-bones server renderer to understand how this stuff works. So we'll make a new file. We'll call it server.jsx. Indeed, this is not TypeScript. I'm using JSX. Yuck. But let's explore. So what we're going to do is import Express from Express. Does this even work? It's a JSX. I don't know. We'll find out. Express is a way to do servers. You could use Fastify. You could use Happy. You could use Koa. Bunch of options. I just like Express. I'll instantiate it. I'll get my root route, and I'll just make sure this is working. And then I'll app.listen, listen. Come on, Copilot. There we go. Perfect. OK, so I'm listening on port 3000. Let's, first of all, just make sure this works. So what I'll do is npm run build and start. Oh, my gosh. What is going on? Thank you. No, that's not actually true. If this doesn't work, it's totally fine because I'm not really. What? Why? Could not resolve events? Who's required? Express. Do I have Express? Do I need types node? All right, I'm going to try one thing, and then if it doesn't work, I'm just going to give up. How about that? Let's try this now. npm run build. OK, well. This is so weird, right? Because like HTTP path. If somebody has an idea, now's your opportunity. Otherwise, I'm going to. Yeah, I don't. Huh? What? Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, he said it. Attila, give it up for Attila, everybody. I need to, very smart, I need to pass, when I build the server, platform node. Brilliant, brilliant. He's a senior engineer. And npx es build, what is it? Somewhere, it's platforms maybe? It's equal. Oh, platform equal. That's awful CLI design, right? Okay, there we go. Wow. Okay, let's try that again. Perfect. Give it up for Attila, everybody. This guy, he knows the. Okay, are we working though? Port 3000. We should just see hello. Perfect. So now what we need to do, that we have a running server, we need to render our React app on the server. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, if we look at our React app, we'll look at, this is the index page. This is all client-side. This doesn't concern us on the server. Our actual app is this. We render div h1p in a suspense boundary breeds, and so on. So it's just a classic React app. We have some magic going on here where we data fetch using suspense. We don't have time for that, unfortunately, but it's an app that fetches data. So in our server, we'll render. So what I'll do is take my, I'll import a render. So render to string from React DOM/server. And now I'm just going to render my app to a string and see what happens. So I'll render to string, app, like that, and save. Simple. Let's see if this works. We'll rebuild, we'll rerun, everything's fine. Perfect, it works. But I'm not fetching data. Damn it. Because what you do when you render on the server is you just render everything immediately to a string. And that's because this function from React DOM, render to string, is synchronous. It has to return immediately. It cannot stop and wait. What can stop and wait is a function called render to pipeable stream. And this is JavaScript, so it's not going to give me auto-completion. Yuck. But I know this stuff. It's fine. We'll render to pipeable stream my app, and this takes a second. Let's actually give ourselves more space. It takes a second argument with options. And what we can do is we can say on shell ready. That's when our app is ready. We basically just pipe the React app to the response. Okay? This is it. And this is these are the details that just use a framework give you. They handle data fetching and everything on the server for you. So now the question, is this going to work? Let's take a look. So we'll build this, we'll run it. And indeed, it's taking a bit of time because it fetched, and the data did fetch on the server. The cool thing is this isn't interactive. You notice this doesn't update. And that's because we don't have React on the client side. In fact, if I click here, on the React icon, it says this page doesn't appear to be using React. All of that data fetching happened on the server. It's absolutely brilliant. And if you look at how it happened, the underlying mechanism, this is even more brilliant. So if we do this again, and we fetch data on localhost 3000, what you'll notice is the data was fetched. There was no loading, because it fetches once and caches it intelligently. All of this happens with a framework. And that's one of the reasons you should use a framework. Finally, if you want to close the loop, there's, I think it's Bootstrap scripts, I believe, Bootstrap scripts. And here you just give it an array of like client.js. And we tell our Express app to get the client.js bundle from the static directory. And now we should, in theory, have React both on the server and the client. And we don't. OK. I don't know why, and frankly, it's the end of the day and we don't have time for that. But ideally, I hope I've shown you how frameworks work a little bit and why it's better to trust them. Because these synchronous versus asynchronous APIs versus data fetching, all of that is handled for you. Okay? Second thing that's a trend in front end is fine-tuning applications. Again, milliseconds make millions. People want fast stuff. And how do they get fast stuff? Through really intricate performance fine-tuning. Attila mentioned in his talk earlier, whoa, that the virtual DOM is slow is not an accurate statement. And that's true. Regardless, the virtual DOM in React is a factor for performance not being as good as it can be. Why is that? Attila mentioned this in his talk. If you have a React component that has a use state hook, and that component's state changes, everything that descends from that in your tree re-renders, is recomputed. Each function is recalled with its props, unless the function is memoized. You have to think about this. You have to think about, okay, where do I memoize? What do I memoize? I want efficient updates, and this mental overhead is a little bit difficult. And because of that, we saw the rise of fine-grained reactivity. Things like signals in solid.js, in Quick, in Angular, and in Svelte, I believe they're called runes. This is a trend you need to pay attention to. And I want to show you a quick demo of why that happens. Attila already did a great counter demo, and I have a similar demo. It's actually a counter, but just to show you side by side the difference. So we'll come here and we'll npm run dev on this, and then we'll go here and what I want to do is run two examples side by side. Okay, React, and we'll npm run dev here. And we'll npm, oh, we're already running npm run dev. What server are you? They're both on 3000? Wow. Let's just do port 3001. Okay, perfect. So now ideally we have on 3000 solid and on 3001 React. Okay, yeah, perfect. So this is solid and we'll do 3001 React. And what we'll do is we'll open them in a split view. So this one. Okay, so left is React, right is solid. Before we get into it, I want to show you the code as well. So if you'll come with me to the code base, we'll close this and we'll open this fully. This is the code, right? You have a main with a count and a counter. Let's actually take this on this side. There we go. Count 0 and a counter, and then a button on click, you just increment the counter. And component. What is component? Component is some component written somewhere else in our code base that is a 10,000 element array of random numbers. Okay? This component could be literally anything somewhere in your code base. You import it from somewhere, you export it. The point is, in large code bases, stuff like this gets lost, but you may have some very expensive component. The React and Solid code bases are identical. The only difference is Solid uses create signal instead of React's use state. But if you look not carefully enough, this will look like a React component to you. It's almost the same. In React, literally, this is the difference. And reading the state is not a function, right? That's the difference. Anyway, so how do they behave? In React, when I increment this counter, all 10,000 of my things are just like completely re-rendered. And that really sucks, because it's unexpected. The state of the parent is changing. The children, nothing's changing in them at all. Their props are not changing. Their state's not changing. But React will re-render them. In Solid, it works as you expect. And that's really the difference. Now the question, can you do this in React? Absolutely you can do this in React. In fact, here, let's do it in React right now. So where's my command line? It's right. So if we go to the React code base, React, npm, we'll go to VS Code, right? This is the React code base. As you can see, use state, set count. The only difference is we go memoize our big expensive component. This is it. That's it. Now, as long as the props don't change, look at that. It's identical to Solid. So all we need to do is just think about this, and everything's fine. Of course, the expectation is ideally we don't have to think about this, right? React sold us the promise, it just works, trademark. And so that's, why do I have to think about this now? But in Solid, you also have to think about stuff. For example, if you destructure your props, if you accidentally attack reactivity, you're going to have a problem. So mental load is on both sides. I want to give you a balanced view here, okay? And also Solid has some more, for example, Solid has an each component if you want to iterate and so on. React just has .map. You have to ask yourself, is it worth learning new syntax or just learning to use memo effectively? That's really your trade-off. But there's an excellent article by Daishi Kato that says React You may not even need signals. It's a great read. I highly recommend. Spoiler alert, you don't actually need signals in React. Okay? The third thing, we're almost done. How are we feeling? You want me to move on? No. Someone said yes. Aris is like, please, get over it. It's invisible. The front end is slowly becoming invisible. What does that mean? Everything's moving to the server. We're actually shipping less and less JavaScript, which is great. I'll show you an example of this quickly. Pun intended. Who here has used Quick? 4. Who knows about Quick? Same people. Okay. So I will npm. Actually, I'm already npm running my React, but let's npm run Quick, npm run dev, and we'll go kill our solid project just so that we have some ports. Okay, so now we have a Quick app running on 5173. It's another counter. The cool thing about this counter, compared to the React counter, is that this loads no JavaScript from the network at all at the initial load. It's always 1 kilobyte of JavaScript running in my browser, and that's just the Quick runtime. 1 kilobyte. Every single website built with Quick ships 1 kilobyte of JavaScript. Always. Predictable. And you might be thinking, how do they achieve that? They achieve it by lazy loading everything intelligently. So let's look at the code that drives this counter. If we if we look at the code here, what we'll see is the code is almost exactly the same. We have component $ count use signal 0, h1 counter on click. What you'll notice is the only difference is that there's $ occasionally, right? What these $ do, I don't know if that's big enough. Let me give you some. So what these $ do is they're not like PHP where you have like $_, like this stuff. It's not jQuery. What it does is it tells Quick, when you encounter a $, take the immediately next function, split it out into a separate JavaScript file, and then lazy load it in only when the user needs it, intelligently. So in the case of this component, when the component enters the viewport, then only then it will be loaded over the network. Similar with the button. Only when the button is clicked will this function be loaded. So just imagine this for a second. We all, if you're not using Quick, we ship websites with on-click handlers, some of them totaling multiple kilobytes, some of them maybe megabytes, that if people never click on the button, we ship it for absolutely no reason. That's the state of front-end today. And with Quick, unless and until you click something, you never send it to your users, right? That's pretty amazing. In fact, what's even more amazing is you see this function references count. Okay, but where is count coming from? Count is coming from outside the scope of this function. This is called closure in JavaScript, right? But somehow, Quick can take this, split it out, and still capture that lexical scope magically, literally magic. There's some compiler tricks that they do. But this is kind of nuts. And so if we inspect the network here, what we'll see is, and if I filter for JavaScript, the moment I don't know what's happening. The moment I click increment, wow, it loaded a bunch of stuff. And one of the things it loaded was this, which is, if you look at the code, its count is use lexical scope, and it's something that increments the count. Indeed, the name of the function is routes component div button on click. On click, gurva hajile hap 8, right? And this was my function that Quick separated out and loaded on demand. Because of that, the front end is becoming more invisible, and this is a good thing. You know why? Then we ship lighter, faster experiences to our users, and as we know from the beginning, what? Milliseconds make millions, okay? We need to move fast because we're at the end of the day, but if you want to know more about Quick and resumability and all of that, how it works, I do have a video on YouTube. I'm not going to sit here and tell you like and subscribe and smash that bell. Frankly, I don't care if you do that or not, but there is some pretty good information that I'm quite proud of. So if you want to join that, you can. All right, let's continue the discussion about UI tools. We live in an ecosystem that is so rich with options, and they're all good. Recently on social media, there were blog posts flying around of why I don't use Next.js, why I do use Next.js, why your mom should use Remix, like a bunch of things. And I think all of that's great, but I want to give you a quick recap of these things so that you're up to speed. Let's start. Angular. Anyone use Angular in production? Hey, what's it like being a minority? I'm joking. I'm totally joking. Angular is awesome. It is a Swiss Army knife for large-scale applications that is opinionated. You get solutions for routing, for data, a lot of things out of the box. Angular has support for signals, which is tremendous. And Angular, I can't say much about Angular because in 3 days, they're recreating Angular. Literally, say hello again to Angular. It's been very mysterious about this event, lots of NDAs. We don't know what's happening, so stay tuned. In 3 days, they're going to do something with Angular. That's exciting. About Vue, Vue 3. Anyone using Vue 3? Yeah, I see some hands. Vue 2 kind of sucked, if we're being honest. The Vue guy, the Nux guy, is agreeing with me because Vue 2 was not type safe. You couldn't use it very well with TypeScript and so on. But Evan You, the author of Vue, decided, you know what? We care about TypeScript and we care about supporting TypeScript, and so literally rewrote Vue 2 from the ground up. That is Vue 3. It's relatively early, right? It's relatively. I think the adoption curve is still heavily in favor of Vue 2, unfortunately, but Vue 3 gives you a lot of type safety and the possibility to have asynchronous single-file components with an amazing data fetching story. And so I'd encourage looking into that if you're interested in that kind of thing. The awesome thing about Vue is you don't need to have a build step, as far as I know. You can just like script tag, include it, done, which is a huge, huge advantage over a lot of the other tools. React is probably the slowest way to build on the web today, for now. That's because the virtual DOM does expensive operations, as Attila pointed out. There's also the double buffering style fiber reconciler that maintains 2 copies of your DOM tree in memory. And it's just, compared to all the others, it's just not efficient. But React's first priority, let me say, is not efficiency. It's developer experience. React was born as a developer experience tool 10 years ago. I've been using React since 2013. And React is only focused on developer experience. So you go to the React team and you say, hey, what about signals? They say, cool, but like, why should you have to think about that? Because React has always been, write JSX, it works predictably. That's it. So React is actually undergoing a big, big change called React Forget. Anyone heard about Forget? No? OK, many of you, yeah. Forget is a new, people describe it as a memoizing compiler. It's not that. It's more a tool chain. It's more than just a compiler. And essentially, you run it as your build step. And what it will do is automatically scan your code base, apply and enforce the rules of React. So one-way data flow. You cannot mutate props. No hooks in or after conditionals. All of this, it's like a linter. But also, it outputs automatically, completely, you know, we did the use memo thing or the memo thing here, all automatic. You don't have to think about it. And this is React's argument for not adopting signals, is like signals is cool, but it's more of a implementation detail. What we want is developer experience where you don't think about signals, you don't think about VDOM, you don't think about you just like write UI. You write UI, you ship UI, you're happy, right? And that's kind of the React side of the world. Svelte is a compiler. It's not quite JSX. It's quite, now we use Svelte in production at a number of clients. And I think it's a compiler that outputs clean JavaScript. And what makes Svelte really awesome is its first-class support for like animations. You get a lot out of the box with Svelte. Huge fan. But the syntax I find a little bit, you know, not for me. Because it's almost JSX, but not quite, etc. Solid is in syntax closest to React and is faster than React by a lot because it is built for performance, right? The author, Ryan, mentioned, I just don't think React is the best we can do, and so I want to do something better. And indeed, the syntax, as you saw, looks exactly like React, but it uses signals and it's faster, okay? Quick is like Solid, but it like code splits out everything in lazy loads, as we've seen. This should give you enough of a landscape of the tools available to you to participate in conversations without imposter syndrome. That's the goal of this talk. It's not to make you go like adopt anything. I don't want you to give me money or subscribe to my channel. I want to give you information so that when you hear conversations, you're not thinking, damn, I'm stuck at my job. I don't have time to dig into this stuff. But now you know enough to participate, okay? So then the question, how do I choose based on all these trade-offs, based on all these tools? Evan You, the author of Vue.js, I watched one of his talks in person at Render ATL this year. And he made this really great point. He was like, honestly, these all can coexist. It doesn't really matter what you choose as long as it allows you and your team to build things well. Like, it doesn't matter. Choose what you want. We, for example, at Crab Nebula, Attila works there, Fabian works there, we use Solid in production and Svelte Kit, and they're awesome. And we don't have to pick one. Depending on your engineering team, you could do more. In fact, you could choose many. Elian is here from Astro. And Astro, using islands architecture, allows you to have little portions of interactivity that are built with different UI libraries. You could do that if you wanted to. And I see the positives in that if you have like a team of, if you want to hire across a vast variety of fluencies, you could. The problem is if you include the React plugin, the Solid plugin, the Svelte plugin, it'll probably add to your bundle size. So your mileage may vary, but Astro is a really compelling thing because of its island architecture. It says demo here. I'm not going to do a demo here. Let's talk quickly about things we didn't cover. There's a lot of things we didn't cover. These are all part of the front-end ecosystem today, from AI to CSS to multiplayer apps. There's a lot of things, but unfortunately, we have like 20 minutes. How do you expect to do all this in 20 minutes? So what I did was focused on the things that I think are the most practical and the nuance and the detail between the topics that are quite prevalent, with the hope that you'd have more conversations and pursue the rest on your own. Let's wrap up. Finally, what should I do with all this information? What should you do with all this information? Should you go use Tauri? You should use Tauri. The answer is really, I don't know. It's my goal, again, is to just give you information, empower you to have some great conversations, high agency, that is autonomy, that is you feel empowered to participate, and you feel ideally some gratitude for the information that you received. With that, hey, I want to thank you so much for sticking it out for over 2 hours. Appreciate you. Thank you.